I just got the February 2025 edition of the Tree Care Industry Magazine. In this edition, there is an article written by me. Sometimes I write for this magazine, but often I just publish on my own website at treefirst.org. If you're interested in seeing anything else I've written, you can see it there. I will also be republishing the article in here on that website as well, and I will link it in the description. Ordinarily, I don't create videos alongside my articles, but this time I thought I would just try something new. I thought I might explain the inspiration behind the article and to expand on a point that I don't think I expanded on enough in the written version. The article was inspired really by two separate things. One, a city just south of me in Pleasant Ridge was hit by a number of summer storms and a bunch of tree failures, one of which crushed someone's house. Nobody was hurt, but this tree happened to be hollow, and that got the attention of a lot of the residents there. So I had a bunch of calls and emails about assessing the health of their trees and making sure their trees were healthy. And after speaking with a lot of these people, I realized that they weren't asking me for a health analysis, they were asking for a risk analysis. And both of these things are important, but they're different things. The tools I use to assess tree health are not the tools I use to assess tree risk. The second thing that inspired this article, sometimes I will see folks describe the use of tomography as a health analysis tool, a way to check in on the health of your trees. And as someone who uses those tools, that's not how I use them. I use them to assess risk, not health. In a tree first approach, I divide tree caretaking into the stress domain, which I suppose you could also call health, and the risk domain. These are two sides of the same coin. Both are important to do, but they're different things. The people in Pleasant Ridge, and I suppose many other people, have the notion that hollowing is an indicator of poor tree health. And they think that hollowing is a property that only unhealthy trees have. And I argue that is not the case. Neither of those statements are true. The xylem and the phloem on the outermost rings of a tree are doing most of the conducting of fluids and nutrients throughout the tree system. If the base of a tree hollows out in the absence of a wound, it is the heartwood that is decomposing, decaying, and eventually hollowing out. Trees don't rely on heartwood to do the living stuff. Heartwood has some other functions that I talk about in the article, but it's not that. In other words, you could say that heartwood is not hydraulically functional. So if it is absent, nothing on your stress test will pick that up so long as the sapwood is still functional. You won't detect heart rot or hollowing with a health analysis. Earlier I mentioned tomography. This is how you would assess the interior quality of a stem, and this is how you actually detect hollowing. And tomography is primarily used in the risk domain because hollowing, while it doesn't affect health, can affect stability or risk. Differentiating when you're working in either the stress domain or the risk domain is really important because this helps inform the client and it helps describe what the goals are, what the desired outcomes are. If, for instance, I'm pruning an oak, I'm doing a reduction of an oak, I'm not making this tree healthier by pruning it. I'm making the tree have less risk. Again, an important thing to do, but a different thing to do. Many trees are hollow that give no indicator of being hollow. It's an important thing to think about, but it's not something that will, on its own, give reason to remove a tree. Most veteran and all ancient trees have degrees of hollowing in their trunks. That is something that is an inseparable part of the tree aging process. And if every time we find hollows in trees, we remove and kill them, we don't allow ancient and veteran trees to come about. Knowing how to assess tree health and tree risk are important things that good arborists can differentiate and can perform. And being able to describe what you're doing, talk about the intended outcomes of them, is how you're actually going to preserve trees and increase the chances of all the trees that you work with reaching veteran and ancient stages. These conversations can be challenging to navigate, and it's important that you do it right, because if you do it wrong, sometimes it can lead to the tree being removed when it could have been managed instead. If you can provide supporting data and explain how you got the data, its limitations and whatnot, in my own experience, this is how you keep trees around. And I think that's the whole point of doing arboriculture in the first place.